Welcome to Chop Shop Motors. My name is Clay, and the sun's starting to set a little bit. We're going to take a little bit of time this evening, and we're going to see if we can make a little progress on the 30-day truck challenge. So, if you're just joining us, what this truck challenge is we're turning a pile of 53 to 6 Ford pickup parts into a run-and drive-in truck. So probably not an impossible feat for a lot of you out there, but kind of fun for us to do. See if we can do it in a really short amount of time. And so that's kind of what we're doing. We've progressed along, we've made some nice progress. We've shortened up the frame on an F250 and turned it into a short bed from a long bed. And now we're about halfway through turning it from a 3/4 ton to a 1/2 ton. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get some air tools out, and I'm going to start removing the rear end out of this, take some leaves out of the springs, and see how much progress we make in making the next chapter of our conversion, if you will. So thanks for following along, and let's get to it. Okay, so where are we so far? Well, I started to pull the rear U-bolts off of the spring, off the rear springs. So Arizona truck usually comes apart. They usually come apart relatively easy, not terribly rusty like some of the guys that are back east having to deal with, but I'll tell you, I have not had any luck getting the bolts loose with a big 1/2 inch drive air impact. One came loose. So we're going to take and heat up the nut. I've got the oxygen acetylene out here. I'm going to heat up the nut, see if we can get it to basically break the seizure of where it's bonded to the stud, and then we'll use the impact and see if we can get them apart. So let me give that a try, and I'll let you know how that works. Okay, well that was pretty exciting. So, air hose came apart, things started hissing. I wasn't sure if maybe I'd gotten the torch close to something else, because, you know, you're dealing with an open flame, who knows what else you might touch. But hose came apart, we got the hose fixed. I heated up the rest of the nuts on the U-bolts. There they are, the U-bolt plates are down. The reason I didn't want to cut the U-bolts, which I'm sure some of you would have thought maybe that was the right choice, is just cut them, is I want to reuse them. So I heated up the nuts and got started to get them red, and basically the stud or the U-bolt and the nut are expanding at 2 different rates. So if you move kind of quickly, it not only breaks the C's, if you will, of the nut being bound to that stud, but it changes the dimension and it allows me to pull them apart. So we should be able to use the U-bolts again, bolt everything back together. I'll chase all the threads on everything and make it so it goes together easily, but you know, we got it apart without tearing anything up. So let me roll this rear end out from under here. Alright, looks more and more like a half ton all along. The farther we go, the better it looks. So rear end is out. We're down to the leaf springs, which we're going to leave, but I am going to pull these packs out, pull them apart, and as you can see, we've got, looks like 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 springs in there. So we'll take a few springs out, thin it down a little bit, soften up the ride. So I'm going to pull those out right now and put the spring packs back together and get it ready for the rear end swap. Okay, before I pulled the spring perches off, the other thing that I did, because I was figuring I would probably forget it, is I moved the 2 snubbers for the rear end forward, and I moved the bracket that the rear brake line fits into. I moved it forward, and the reason I did that is those are little details that usually I forget till after the rear end's in, and it makes it really tough to move some of that stuff. So snubbers are in, brake line brackets on, just another detail that gets it so that when, you know, the rear end's bolted down, I can go ahead and move to another area a little quicker. So it looks like a storm's coming in, stuff's starting to get blown around a little bit. I'll see if I can pull the spring pack apart, but this might be it for tonight. Might call it an evening, but if not, I'll show you a little more progress if I end up making it. See you in a bit. Well, this is probably a pretty short segment. I'm kind of racing the weather, so I didn't film quite as much. But basically what I've done is I've removed some springs out of each side, and it looks like it's a ton of springs that I removed, but if you look, the spring pack now just looks normal. So we're down to a conventional stack of springs, and we should be fine. I ended up having to chase the spring bolt, that center one right here, and thread it down to compensate because it's a little long. We'll cut it off when we're all done. But now that spring is just as it should be. At some point this has had a spring put in it on one side or the other because they're not the same. Simply turn the outside light back on. Kind of wave in here. There's a motion light that's marginal. Then on this side, got a little different shackle bolt. This bolt right here is a little different on this side. I mean, the spring leaves are the same and the links are the same. Just probably had a spring shop back in the day do it. The center bolt on this spring pack was no good, and I had a new one to put in it. So replace that center bolt to hold the spring together. Like I said, we'll cut it off once we get a little closer to being all together. The bracket got moved forward for the brake line so we can reshape the steel brake line to allow it to miss the shock when it's all done. And it's got the rubber snubbers. Yeah, it's getting closer. It's a little bit closer to being ready to put the rear end in. You know, my goal was to really make this move really quickly, but some of the stuff like moving the snubbers and things like that, I just there's no need to move so fast that you don't do that stuff. It just isn't quite my approach. So we'll want to move quick. We're not painting anything or doing any detail. We still got another cross member to move here. We got a couple more brackets up here, and we got 2 more bolts to put in the bottom of the rear spring hanger. So we still have a little bit of stuff to do, probably another, I don't know, another night's worth of stuff on the miscellaneous, but I'm going to keep moving forward after I clean up tonight get rid of the dirt and the carnage. I'll get ready. Next step will be to pull the rear end out of this truck. Motion light. Guess it's not really motioning much. I just wander around like a burglar would. Oh well. Anyhow, we'll pull the rear end out of this truck next, and we'll start seeing kind of what's the blending of pieces to get the rear end onto these springs. It should be super straightforward. A little bit of difference in the width of the spring, but I've got all the miscellaneous pieces to play with between the two trucks. So that's kind of the story. It won't be long, and this will be a full-fledged half ton. I'm Clay for Chop Shop Motors, and we'll see you on the next project.